Okay, welcome back, ladies and gents, to part 2 of 3 of these tutorial videos. If you didn't watch part 1, which was the HIRA, please take this opportunity to go back and watch the first video, HIRA, before you watch part 2, this particular video. In this particular video, ladies and gents, we're going to focus on HSEMP, which is our Health, Safety, Environmental Management Plan, or some folks in industry will refer it to as a Health, Safety, Environmental Management Program. Management plan, management program, it is the same thing. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're just going to continue our little story with paper production. So those of you that didn't watch part 1, the HIRA, please do that. For those of you that did watch the HIRA video, just as a reminder, these were our inputs and outputs, and I'll just jump straight to our 3 safety risk assessments. They are there. Again, please take this opportunity to pause the video if you want to catch up on what we looked at in terms of formulating the hazards, the risk with consequence, and how we were going to evaluate those risks. There were the 3 examples for the health risk assessments, H1, H2, and H3. And there are our 3 examples for environmental assessments, E1, E2, and E3. And we just talked about, how not to formulate hazards and risks. Also, just to remind ourselves, when we are formulating a hazard, you do not want to include the risk in your hazard formulation. For example, for H2, if you had to formulate your hazard by saying employees exposed to the noise from the debarking machine, now that would be incorrect, because the moment you start mentioning words like exposure to the noise, that is actually defining the risk, which goes in this column here. All right, so go back to video 1, part 1, and just go through that video just to see and remind ourselves how to formulate hazards and risks. Now that we've done that, we're now going to move on to the management plan, the HSEMP. And this is the blank template. And ladies and gents, when you do eventually write your Sandtrack summative assessment exam in the NOSA colleges, in part B of your exam paper, you will be given a case study. From that case study, you're going to formulate your risk assessments, your HIRA. Just read the question as to how many safety risk assessments you have to formulate, how many health, how many environmental. So just read the question very carefully. From that HIRA, you're then going to move on to HSEMP, and you're going to develop a management plan based on your HIRA that you developed. Now, this is why it's important to get your HIRA correct. Get your correct hazards formulated, get your correct risk with consequence formulated, because if you go wrong in your HIRA, that is going to be devastating, because now the information drawn into or pulled from your HIRA into your management plan is also going to be incorrect. All right. But that is the template that we're going to fill out in our exams. And this is a template that you can actually even use in industry as well. We're going to identify the same referencing that we use in our HIRA and the same risk. It's literally just a copy and paste. Then we're going to set ourselves an objective. We're going to identify a target. We're going to implement a control. Who's going to be the responsible management person? And we're going to set a specific due date. A management plan is very, very important, ladies and gents, in industry, because now that you've identified the problems, the hazards and the risks, the management plan gives us an opportunity to address those problems, if that makes sense. Right, so it's going to be this example, based on the same 3 risk assessments we identified in the first video, same 3 health, same 3 environmental. So, ladies and gents, the referencing here that you can see on this example, safety 1, safety 2, and safety 3, including the risks, are exactly the same. If I just jump back to the HIRA, the safety HIRA, are exactly the same. Safety 1, safety 2, safety 3, and there are my risks. Can you see that? What I've done, and what you will do the same, is you literally take the same information here, same information there, and you move on to your management plan, and you're literally going to almost copy and paste. Safety 1, my risk is employees handling those sharp blades, resulting in cuts. Safety 2, poorly stacked logs rolling, coming into contact with my employees, causing crush injuries such as broken bones. And safety 3, employees contacting that hot steam resulting in burns. Okay, so same information from your hirer. Now we come to the objective. Now, this is the specified future condition in terms of what would we like to do about this risk. In the most ideal world, it would be great to work in an environment where there are no risks, no hazards, no risks. That would be the most ideal, perfect world. But ladies and gents, we don't live in the perfect world. We are always going to have hazards. We are always going to have a certain amount of risk in our workplace. So in this objective, this is what we want to do either about the hazard or about the risk. And you can actually formulate your objective based on whatever your risk identified was, or even your hazard. Can you see in my objectives, my 3 safety objectives here? I've got in red, bold font, the word reduce, reduce, reduce. When formulating your objectives, ladies and gents, you must always start your objective with these trigger specific words like reduce. Now, you don't always have to necessarily use the word reduce. You could use the word decrease. You could use the word minimize. You could use the word mitigate. They are different words, but they technically all mean the same thing. You could actually even use the word eliminate. Now, you've got to be careful here if you are going to start your objective with the word eliminate, because that means to completely remove. If you can completely eliminate the hazard, whatever the hazard was in your hirer, that would be great. But from a practical point of view, it would be very, very difficult to, in fact, eliminate the hazard. All right, so what we're going to do here is that we are going to link the objective, my set objectives here, to my risks. So your objectives, guys, must start. You must be very clear and start your objective with these words: reduce, minimize, decrease, mitigate. They all mean the same thing. But what are we going to reduce? Well, I'm going to be reducing the amount of cut-related incidents. I want to reduce the amount of my employees getting cut whilst handling those used blades. In safety 2, I want to reduce reported incidents of broken bone cases. Again, it's linking to my risk. In safety 3, I want to reduce reported incidents of burns. So all 3 objectives are linking directly to my risk. Once you've set your objective, now we've got to be setting a measurable target. Remember, when we're setting objectives and targets, we've got to use the SMART principle that you learned in your course content. SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, or some folks in industry will like to use the word attainable. It's got to be realistic. We've got to set a specific time period in order to meet our objectives and targets. In industry, ladies and gents, setting a target will actually be a lot easier and a lot more clearer because, you know, we spoke about in video 1 statistics, risk evaluation and things like that. You know, you will actually be able to identify in your industry, if this was, you know, as a pretend your risk assessment, you know, you've got statistics to identify how many of your employees have got cut, you know, the last month, the last 6 months, the last financial year, etc. So setting a target would actually be a lot more easier. But in a training fictitious type environment, a lot of discretion is exercised, ladies and gents, when you're setting your targets. And you're more than welcome to have a look at these examples, plus some of the examples that are in your course content. So in this particular safety 1, I want to reduce my cut-related incidents. And my target here is by 5 cases less per financial year. You know, in industry, you will actually be developing your management plans on an ongoing basis. You're constantly reviewing your management plans. So once this objective is set at the end of the financial year, we've met the target, we can then, for the next financial year, set a new objective. Or it could be the same objective, but we can set a new target for the next financial year, if that makes sense. For safety 2, I want to reduce my incidence of broken bone cases. And my target here is by 3 cases less per financial year. For safety 3, I want to reduce my reported incidence of burns. My target is by 50% less cases per financial year. All right, so when formulating your target in your exam, Again, you could use a very simple target because, again, it's just a fictitious case study. Then we move on to the next column. This is our activity/controls. So this is the problem. This is what we want to do about the problem. This is how much we want to achieve our objective by. And this is our problem-solving solution. This is hopefully going to help us to achieve that objective by that, reduce that said risk by that said objective, by that said target. What we're looking for from you, ladies and gents, in your exams. Now, please just listen carefully here. We are looking for from you as the learner participating in the summative assessment, one control, just one. Now, the control that you're going to implement, or at least identify on your management plan, it's going to be based on the hierarchy of HSE controls that you've learned way back in your intro, plus in your SAMTRAK. And just as a reminder, the HSE hierarchy of controls at the very top of the pyramid, the most effective control, elimination. Then we go down to substitution, engineering, administrative, and then we know last resort is PPE. In your SAMTRAK management plans, in your exam, ladies and gents, please do not use PPE controls. We do not want to see PPE controls because they are the last resort. Not only does your management system dictate that it is the last resort, the law also dictates it is the last resort. So the controls we're going to implement must be based on the hierarchy. Do not use PPE controls, because if you are going to use PPE controls, your SAMTRAK assessor is going to award you 0 marks for your entire management plan. And that is going to be costly. All right. So we're just looking for one control based on the hierarchy. And you must formulate your control in detail. Like you can see for safety 1 here, I'm saying conduct on-the-job training with the employees on the correct safe handling of those used blades. So I'm doing some form of training and awareness. And I've been specific as to exactly what I want to train my employees on. I want to train them on the safe handling of those used slitter blades. Don't just say training as an admin control. Training on what? What do you want to train your employees on? And if that's what you're going to put, the SAMTRAK assessor is going to put a question mark and say, training on what? In industry, your management will pull you into the office to say, training on what? Do you want to train your employees on how to tie their safety boot shoelaces? Do you want to train them on how to cook an egg? What do you want to train them on? Okay, so we've got to be specific here. Safety 2, I'm actually implementing here an engineering control. Construct a concreted bunded area to contain/store all of those logs. And the reason why I'm doing that, because if we go back to the HIRA, look at my hazard, debug logs poorly stacked. And my risk was those logs rolling, making contact, causing crush injuries such as broken bones. So in my management plan, I want to build a specific area in which these logs, before they enter the debarking section, are going to be correctly stacked and stored in this area to minimize the effect of them rolling, resulting in crush injuries. For safety 3, another engineering control. I want to install a fixed steam guard over the vessels to reduce contact with that steam. So again, I want to do some form of machine guarding, engineering control. All right, so you must formulate your controls, ladies and gents, in sufficient detail to enable the SAMTRAK assessor to draw a conclusion that you have got an understanding of basic concept as to how to reduce your risks. Once you've done that, you're going to move on to the responsible person. This person must be of a management position because it is in fact a management plan. So we're looking at a management level title person. Preferably in industry, it will be an internal person. Now, in industry, you could actually put your colleague's name. Whoever is your training manager, you could actually put their name on your management plan. But we don't use names in a SAMTRAK exam. We're going to just use generic job titles, like what you see there. For safety 1, because I'm going to do some form of training with my employees, I'm going to allocate this responsibility to a training manager. For safety 2, I'm going to construct a concrete abundant area. Who's going to be responsible for this control? It's going to be my operations manager, my ops manager. Safety 3, another engineering control, install a fixed steam guard. It would make sense to give this to my appointed engineering manager. Okay, so again, a bit of discretion is exercised here. We're just looking for from you in your exam, just generic job titles, just to get that basic concept. The responsible person, must be relevant to the actual control. For example, safety 3, if you were saying install guards, some sort of machine guarding, and you said your responsible person was the human resource manager, the HR manager. Now, no disrespect to the HR manager, but I don't believe that they have got the right competency requirements to actually go ahead and install machine guarding. So you see, your responsible management person must be relevant to your actual control. Another little tip, ladies and gents, don't just say manager. Your responsible person is a manager. Can you imagine going to a very, very large workplace and shouting, "Hey, manager"? You're going to have probably about 5 or 6 people turning around and say, "Yes, Nick, which manager?" "Oh, no, sorry. I'm looking for the stores manager. I'm looking for the sales manager. I'm looking for the procurement manager. I'm looking for the HSE manager. I'm looking for the engineering manager." Makes sense. Also, another tip, ladies and gents, don't put the actual department. We see this a lot in Soundtrack. Let's say for safety 3, instead of the student saying engineering manager, they would just put their engineering. The word engineering. Now, the word engineering, that is actually specifying a department and not a person. So we don't want to see departments because the management plan is actually asking for a person. Okay, so don't use the word engineering. It's the engineering manager. Makes sense. All right, and then the final column, this is the due date. Now, in a training environment, in your exams, ladies and gents, a lot of discretion is exercised here. But what we're looking for from you is a specific, because remember, we've got to be smart when setting our management plans, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. We want to see from you a specific day, a specific month, and a specific year. And whatever the day, the date is of your exam, just use that date and move into the future. So let's say you're going to write your exam, I don't know, the 1st of October, 2025, and this is your management plan. You could put there, for example, the 15th of October, 2025. And that should really, from a practical point of view, give our training manager sufficient time to be able to implement that control measure. Okay, so we just keep it simple. We're looking for a specific day, month, and a year moving into the future. Don't go back in time and say, the 1st of January, 1998. I was like, what? You're going back in time. We want to see you going into the future. Okay. Don't just put the month like July or when in July. Or don't put just the year, 2025 or 2026 or when. We got to be specific. All right. But that, ladies and gents, if you want to just pause the video there, that is a very simple example of a safety management plan. From there, let's have a look at my 3 health management plans. So same reference, H1, H2, H3, same risks that I've drawn from my HIRA. So let's just go back to the HIRA very quickly. H1, H2, H3, and there are my 3 health risks. Short-term inhalation to that wood dust, resulting in lung irritations. Long-term overexposure to that interrupted noise from the debarking machines, resulting in noise-induced hearing loss. And for H3, employees constantly lifting incorrectly, causing backaches. So the referencing and the risks are pulled all the way through into the management plan. H1, H2, H3, and there's the risks. Then we go back to the objective. And you can see here, I've been a little bit different here. For H1, my objective is to minimize the level of wood dust created from a chipping process. Remember, guys, you can actually link your objective to your hazard. That's perfectly fine. Or if you can't minimize the actual hazard, then you're going to start looking at mitigating the risk, because that's exactly what the law says. The law says, in terms of our Occupational Health and Safety Act, if the employer cannot eliminate the hazard, then we must mitigate the risks. So here, I'm proving that we are going to be mitigating either the hazard or the risk. Okay. But in this particular example for H1, My problem is, in fact, the wood dust. So I'm going to set an objective to try and minimize the amount of wood dust created during let's just go back to the higher, it was during the chipping process. There was my hazard, that excessive wood dust. So I want to try and minimize that wood dust because hopefully that will then also mitigate the risk. So I want to minimize the level of wood dust from the chipping process. For health 2, I want to reduce reported diagnosed cases of NIHL. Now, the reason why I haven't set my objective for H2 to actually reduce the noise, because I'm thinking practically, let's just jump back to the HIRA. And you can see what I'm doing here, guys. Everything that you're developing in your management plan is linking back to your HIRA. If we look at H2, my hazard is that noise coming from that debarking machine. Now, I'm thinking practically here as a risk assessor. To minimize that noise from the debarking machine, that's going to be incredibly difficult. I mean, how are you actually going to do that? That debarking machine is the machine that's actually producing the noise. I don't know how you would actually do this practically because it's coming from a portable handheld debarking machine, or it could be an industrial debarking machine. Okay, so you can get different types of debarking machines, some portable ones or the big industrial static machines. How are you actually going to reduce that noise? So this is why in my management plan, I'm actually linking my objective back to my risk. I want to reduce the reported diagnosed cases of NIHL because that was my risk. For health 3, I want to reduce reported incidents of ergonomic-related backaches. So again, I'm linking my objective straight to my risk. My 3 targets for H1. So I want to minimize that wood dust from the chipping process. My target is by 70% less ppm, which is my parts per million of dust in a cubic meterage of air. I want to reduce my diagnosed cases of NIHL by 3 hours less exposure per shift. And I want to reduce my reported incidence of ergonomic related backaches by 5 less complaints per month. How are we going to achieve these targets? For H1, I want to install extraction fans in the chipping area to extract the dust. In other words, we're going to be installing LEV, which you've learned in your Samtrack course content, LEV, local exhaust ventilation. Fantastic engineering control. For health 2, a very successful administrative control, implement regular job rotation with the employees in that section to lower exposure time, because that was my target. I want to reduce exposure time by 3 hours less per shift. And this is how I'm going to do it, by swapping my staff around the area. So you're going to spend this amount of hours in the debarking section. Then from there, you move to that section. So you're rotating your staff. How am I going to reduce 5 less complaints of ergonomic related backaches? Well, I'm going to do an admin control. I'm going to conduct ergonomic manual handling training to gain competency. Because again, the law requires the employer to ensure employees are ergonomically trained and are ergonomically aware of the hazards and risks in their daily tasks. Who are my responsible people for H1? This is a very complicated technical engineering control. So I'm going to allocate this responsibility to my engineering manager. This one here, I'm going to allocate it to my human resource manager. Hey guys, you could even maybe allocate this to the HSE manager. Okay? HSE manager, human resource manager. If you've got a shift manager, that will also be an applicable person. H3, we're going to go back to our training manager. He's going to be very busy because he's the one who's going to be conducting the ergonomic training with our employees. And then you're going to set your due date, day, month, and year. All right. Pause the video there, ladies and gents. That is an example of a health management plan. And then once we've done that, we're going to move on to our environmental, E1, E2, E3. There's my 3 environmental risks. If we just quickly go back to our HIRA that we looked at in part 1 of the videos, E1, E2, E3, incorrect disposal of the contaminated wastewater down the drains, resulting in water pollution. For E2, incorrect disposal of the offcuts of waste paper outside the factory, resulting in aesthetic pollution. And E3, emissions permitted to atmosphere, resulting in air pollution. So I'm just literally taking my same reference, same risks, and then popping them through onto my management plan, E1, E2, E1, E2, E3, and there are my 3 environmental risks. My objectives: I want to decrease the amount of contaminated water that is being discharged. Remember, you must start your objectives with the words minimize, decrease, mitigate, reduce. E2, I want to minimize reported incidents of aesthetic pollution. For E3, I want to reduce the levels of toxic emissions permitted to atmosphere. So in these 3 objectives, I'm linking my objective straight to my risk. This one straight to my risk. This objective straight to my risk. Okay. My targets, let's have a look. I want to decrease the amount of contaminated wastewater discharge by 5 kiloliters less per shift cycle. I want to minimize reported incidents of aesthetic pollution by 10 incidents per financial quarter. I want to reduce the level of toxic emissions permitted to atmosphere by 20% less pollutants over the next 2 years. Okay, very, very specific, measurable targets. How am I going to achieve this? E1, I'm going to implement an engineering control. I want to install a closed loop water recycling system to clean and reuse contaminated water. For E2, I want to install color-coded skips and dustbins on site to be able to segregate all of that waste. And for E3, another very technical engineering control, install wet scrubbers or wet scrubber filters in all exhaust outlets. And hopefully those wet scrubbers will be able to actually reduce the level of toxic emissions that we are permitting to atmosphere. Very, very technical controls, these guys. So I'm going to allocate them back to my engineering manager. This person has got the competency requirements to be able to complete that activity. This one here, not too technical, but I'm going to give this one to my facilities manager. You can even use maintenance manager. You know, we will accept that. And for E3, another very complicated engineering control. So let's give it to the engineering manager. And then you're going to set your due day, month, and year. All right, so just pause the video there, ladies and gents, and you can just have a look at those environmental objectives, targets, controls, responsible management people, and your due date. Now, when it comes to the assessing how it's going to work in Samtrack, ladies and gents, let me just go back to my first safety management plan. All right, so we've already looked at your risk in your HIRA. This is why it is so critical to get your hazards and risks with consequences correct. So provided the risk is correct, what we're then going to do as Samtrack assessors, we're going to look at your objective. And as long as your objective is smart, it's relevant to your risk or your hazard, you will be awarded a mark there. Your target, again, like I said, a lot of discretion is exercised in your target. So we'll give you a mark there as long as it's relevant to your objective. Your controls must be accurate. If you're going to put a completely irrelevant control that doesn't make any sense, or a PP control, you're going to be awarded 0 marks for your entire management plan. So we'll look at your control. This one's an admin control. It's relevant to your objective. A mark will be awarded there. The correct responsible person, relevant to your activity, a mark there. And then a lot of discretion is exercised for your day, month, and the year. However, if you're just going to put, let's say, the 23rd, 23rd of what month, what year, no mark. Or you say October, when in October, what year, no mark. Or you're just going to say 2025 or 2026, no mark. We want to see day, month, year, 1 mark. Okay. So in safety 1, if this was your example provided, you would actually pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marks on offer. Now listen carefully. If you are able to provide a substitution control or a relevant engineering control, you will actually be awarded a bonus point. For example, safety 3. So you've formulated your objective that's relevant to your risk, 1 mark. Your relevant specific measurable target, 1 mark. Now you can clearly see here, there's an engineering control. It's relevant to your objective. It's relevant to your risk. 1, 2 marks. Correct responsible person, 1 mark. Day, month, year, 1 mark. So this particular example for safety 3 is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marks on offer. Now that's a lot of marks, ladies and gents. So try and aim. Here's a little tip. Try and aim for a realistic control based on the hierarchy. Now you can see I haven't, in any of these safety, health, environmental examples, I actually haven't used any elimination controls. I've either used, in fact, I don't even think I've used substitution controls. I've only used engineering or admin controls. So if you can actually provide a realistic, smart, measurable control based on the hierarchy, substitution, or engineering, a bonus point is on offer here. Okay. Just to reiterate, if you're going to put PPE, you are going to be awarded 0 marks. If your objective, ladies and gents, let me just delete these little green ticks here. Let's just pretend for safety 1 here. Now, I've said there, reduce the amount of cut-related incidents. But let's say you go a little bit wrong in your objective and you put there, reduce the amount of broken bone cases. Hang on a second. If the consequence was cuts, why now is the objective talking about broken bones? Doesn't make sense, does it? Or let's say your objective for safety 1, reduce the amount of air pollution. What? It's got nothing to do with the risk identified in safety 1. So, ladies and gents, if your objective is horribly wrong, then unfortunately, the Samtrack assessor is just going to award you 0 marks. Okay. So you must pay very close attention when setting your objectives, as well as what control measures you're going to implement. Because if you get either this column wrong or this column wrong, the entire SHEMP is awarded 0 marks, which is going to be very, very costly. All right. But in the previous video, ladies and gents, you know, those Samtrack e-learning students, if you are having any further queries, you know, want a little bit more clarification on your Talent LMS, you know, pop your questions, pop your concerns through on the discussion forum. And I will, you know, I will address them and I will guide you through on the discussion forum in better preparation for your upcoming exam. All right. And then guys, please join me in part 3 of the tutorial videos, because in part 3, what we're then going to be looking at next is how are we actually going to measure and monitor these risks. Now that we've implemented controls, we need to go back and check. Following our management system cycle, plan, do, check. So we're going to go back and check that everything that has been implemented in the management plan is in fact working. Because if it's not, we're not going to meet our objectives. We're not going to meet our set target. And then the whole management plan is a complete waste of time. So now we're going to measure and monitor. All right. So please join me in the next video. Thank you, guys. I'll see you then.